Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the first Get It Done webinar from Plano and Simple for 2013. I'm Linda Plano, your entrepreneur coach as always, and I would like to welcome Christine Carr from the Consulate General of Canada in Boston. Welcome, Chris. Welcome, Chris.
Oh, good morning, everyone. I think it's still morning out there.
Well, that's a good point. If we were in Saskatchewan, it would certainly still be morning, but for us, we're all of 3 minutes into the afternoon. Okay.
It may be equally as cold, though.
They're actually having a heat wave there for next week, so it's going to be minus 5°C from what I hear. Very excited.
Okay.
I'm going
Good
there.
morning, everyone, and thank you, Linda, at Plano and Simple for organizing this webinar. And this is a great opportunity for the Consulate in Boston to introduce the Boston Accelerator to Saskatchewan.
And because I am so familiar with the great work that the Consulate does for entrepreneurs from Canada in Boston in all kinds of different ways, I couldn't be happier to help promote a program which I am sure is going to be as high quality as everything else. So let's see, just real quick for those of you who aren't familiar with the webinar, with the GoToWebinar, if you look in the upper right corner of your screen, you will see a red and white arrow. Click on that to open and close your toolbox here. You have other options for doing the hiding and showing. Most important, if you want to ask questions a little bit later on, is to click on, is to make sure your audio is set up. You can't unmute yourself. I will do that when you have a question, if it's possible. If you don't have a mic, no worries. Just what I want you to do in that case is to just type in your questions here in this question box. So I've found that it's useful for most people when they get the question in the first place, go ahead and just fill it in right away so it doesn't get lost in the sauce. Okay, you can also raise your hand, raise your hand if you like, if you have a question, but really the best approach is to just type in your questions. Okay, and real quick, just about me. I'm Linda Plano. That's a two-year-old question now, two-year-old picture now, but you could probably still recognize me from it. I've got a very technical background in school and been an entrepreneur in everything from startup companies to multinational corporations. I like to think I've always been an entrepreneur in each of these, and now I have my own company, Plano and Simple, so just like you, I'm an entrepreneur every day of the week, and I am here to help you to succeed. It's my passion in life, but enough about me. Just for your own reference, we have several more free webinars coming up next week. Next Friday at noon, I expect to be doing a pitch clinic on the 8th, the following Friday. Fred Suhr of Captains of Industry will be online to talk to us about how to do really great content about your business and yourself in order to market your company more effectively. And in a similar vein, on April 12th, Laura Krachanova, Scratch Marketing and Media. She's an expert in inbound strategy. She's very active in the entrepreneurial world here in Boston. It's going to be a couple of really fun Ask a Pro webinars, so I hope you'll join us. And also in person, I will be in Saskatoon on Monday and next week, and in Regina on Wednesday, giving all-day perfect pitch workshops. So hope to see you there. And for those of you who are in Boston, I will be giving one on April 24th at Greentown Labs as a partner with the Association of Clean Tech Incubators of New England. Okay, so enough about all of that. And again, welcome, Chris. It's so great to have you here. Chris is a tremendously talented and experienced international development executive. She has worked with so many startups in so many different ways and countries: China, Taiwan, Australia, Japan, Singapore. One of the best things actually about doing these webinars is I get to talk with people who I've known for a while, and I get to learn all kinds of new things about them. So wow, I had no idea you had the that decade of experience in the Asia and Australia. So very cool. Chris is also incredibly generous with her time and goes well out of her way to help entrepreneurs be successful, especially those from Canada, of course, but she's a great part of the entrepreneurship community here in Boston. And so it's my very great pleasure to be able to turn over to her the opportunity to describe to us this brand new Accelerator program that's coming to Boston. And I want to very much encourage those of you in Saskatchewan to come on down, take advantage, apply to this program. And even if that doesn't work out, I am confident that Chris or one of her colleagues will be able to help you to figure out how to take advantage of the resources down here in Boston. So Chris, anything else, or shall we get into your presentation?
Oh, I'm ready. Let's go.
Let's rock and roll. Okay, I gotta love that attitude. Okay,
Yeah.
So actually, there we go. Okay.
Yeah, we'll just stay on this slide for a second, Linda.
Sure.
So just a bit of background on me. Linda's talking about entrepreneurship, and I have to tell you that that's a topic that's very near and dear to my heart for a number of reasons. Well, the obvious one is I work in that area every day, but I was also born and raised in New Hampshire, actually, and grew up as a daughter of an entrepreneur. And I can certainly appreciate the dynamics of being a member of a family-owned business. I watched my dad and later my brother build a small machine shop, they used to call it, back in the 70s, into a $3 million technology manufacturing company. And I know firsthand what it takes to get it up and running, and moreover, to keep it running. And that business was established in 1969, and it's still running today. Although I was involved in our family's business on and off over the years, I did take the path less traveled, as Linda has indicated. And I had my own career primarily in international business. And I've been working in this area now, specifically in the private sector, since 1990. And my particular strengths are in business development, marketing, and positioning. I won't get into many of the projects that I was engaged in with Asia, but I can tell you that most of the companies that we worked with were small technology companies, actually from China, Taiwan, and places like that in that neighborhood, who wanted to export to the United States. And finally, now today I've had the good fortune to work for Canada, and actually it's been 6 years. I joined the consulate in 2007. I just would like to say for my Canadian friends who are on the phone today that it is a great privilege to work for the federal government, and especially through this Trade Commissioner service, which I can talk about in just a moment. But so today I've got about a 15-minute presentation planned, and I think Linda has some time set aside for Q&A if anybody has any questions. So welcome to the Canadian Technology Accelerator at Boston. And can you go to slide 2?
Just once, as soon as I get the technology down.
No problem. Okay. So this is a good visual of the international representation that Canada has all over the world. Each of these offices are staffed essentially with people like myself who are longtime business executives, really. We have different backgrounds. Most of us are experienced in business development, finance, technology, and other areas. But we all really have the same role, and that's to serve you, Canadian companies. And we're trying to help in any way we can to expand your international business in the geographic territories that you see on this slide. Slide 3. And we do that in a few different ways. Primarily what we do is we identify contacts for you. We get to know your business, you teach us a bit about your business, and we undertake to identify targets for you in our territories. We also look at strategic partnerships based on your advice. We're your legs on the ground in terms of you've identified a strategic partner in our territory, and we do the outreach to set up a meeting and get that company acquainted with your core competencies. And the third area, the third service, I should say, that the Trade Commissioner Service offers is, in the cases where it's needed, to identify investors, potential investors. And we're talking really about venture capitalists and to a lesser extent angel investors, but we do a little bit of work in that area.
Before you move on, I have a question here. So how do I go about finding strategic partners in the Boston area?
Well, typically the way that works is you and I would set up a call, really over the phone, and I'd spend a few minutes walking you through this sort of process that we have here, where I learn a bit about your company, what your progress is to date in Canada and in the U.S., and then together we work towards identifying who those targets are. But the bottom line is it takes a bit of me learning about your business, and we go from there.
So you're willing to really help me do the actual homework for it, speaking as an entrepreneur here. And so do I have to have hit a certain stage of the business before coming and contacting you, or what kind of stage companies do you really like to talk to?
We typically, through our partners in Canada, we typically talk to companies that are a bit past early stage and really at the stage where they've generated sales in Canada, they have executive teams in place, they have a business model and a business approach, and they're taking a serious look at how they can export. So they've done a fair bit of homework before they've come to us, and we have the benefit, of course, of working with our counterparts in Canada, and those folks sit down with you and look at where you're at in terms of your level of readiness for moving into international business.
I assume there's no charge to the company for all these services.
That's right. There is no fee. Canada's federal government provides all of these services for free. We're limited in what we can do each time. So, for instance, if I'm dealing with 100 companies a year, for each company I may have provided 3 or 4 contacts. I've done some legwork, some market research on the ground. I've provided you some advice with your investment pitch through our service providers like Linda. But the real key here for you to make our service the most effective, to create value over the longer term, is for the Canadian companies to stay in contact with us and to keep coming back to our territory and keep us informed of how their business is growing.
So communication is key, just like it is with any of the partners that you have. Great. Okay. So you wanted to go to the next slide?
Yes, please.
And people, keep your questions coming. Go ahead.
Sure. So, yeah, really what we care about the most within our network is seeing Canadian companies increase sales and profits. And we are trying to help Canadian companies build resilient and differentiated companies. One way for us to help is to collect as much intelligence on the ground that we can. Going back to the person just before with the question about strategic partners, we actually have a specific process for doing this, and within our network we call it an outcall program. But for your purpose, what that means is I take a look at the large corporate organizations, companies in the region, and over the course of a year I identify between 10 and 12 of them, and I specifically reach out to them, set up meetings with the C-level team, and we go through a whole interview process where I learn where they're at, what their history has been with Canada or without, where they might be going with Canada or without, and what their capabilities are and what's needed. And what that usually brings to light is the kinds of capabilities they could use from Canada. And that information, then I take that and I bring it back to my clients, and I try to do a little bit of matchmaking. And an example of that is I just was visiting with Nuance, which is a company here in Massachusetts. Several years ago, Nuance purchased Dragon, which some of you might be familiar with.
Oh, right, yeah.
And, it's just fascinating. They came to our office 5 or 6 years ago to tell us about their purchase of Dragon. Well, time went by, and I popped in to see them about 2 months ago. They're a $2 billion company.
And again, what's your cut of that?
I mean, it's just they've really leveraged that Dragon technology in other acquisitions that they've made, and they've built an incredible business, which is still growing.
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic story. Maybe RIM should, I'm sorry, BlackBerry should go and take some quick lessons there.
Yeah. So that's, I hope that answers that question.
Yeah.
Anyways, on to 5. I'm actually going to skip 5 and go straight to 6.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so more getting down to brass tacks here, a bit about the Canadian Technology Accelerator. This slide really does illustrate that there is a method to our madness. So starting with the first step is what we've done is we've identified partners in Canada who are really pushing out the Canadian companies and making recommendations to us for companies that should apply to the accelerator. The next step, and I'll go into more detail about this in the future slides, but the next step is these companies apply for the program. There's a selection committee that reviews the applications. We make selections, and then those companies are brought here to Boston. You can see on the slide that Silicon Valley and New York are also mentioned. We're talking about the Boston program today. Those companies are brought here, and short exposure equals 3 months. So our first session, for example, begins April 1st, and those companies will engage with the Boston Accelerator for 3 months. And then the third part is their actual engagement in the market, and that, again, goes back to one of the questions you had earlier. We will sit down with each of our clients who are residents of the accelerator. We're doing something called an entry interview, which will identify what their objectives are for that period of time, and we'll work together to achieve those objectives.
So you have 7 technology accelerators going on in California, New York, Boston, and Philadelphia this year alone?
That's right. Our current, just as a sidebar here, our current manager, Terry Weisenberger, was the founder of the Accelerator program in California, in San Francisco. So he was really the driving force behind the 4 accelerators that were established in San Francisco. Those have been running since 2009. Terry came here 2 months ago, and he said, let's do it here in Boston, and so be it. So here we are, and because he's already got a formula for success, it's gone pretty well so far.
So there's 7 of them. I assume most of them are in Silicon Valley, but you've got a couple going on here in Boston this year, right?
We've got 4 in San Francisco, 1 in Philly, 1 in New York City, and 1 here in Boston.
Oh, okay. Yes, that is 7, but I thought that there was somebody coming in July as well here in Boston, so I had the feeling there was more than one time. But for this time, you need to be in time for the April accelerator, or is that accelerator full already?
That accelerator is full, and we'll be putting out our call for applications, I guess sometime in, I think it's May or early June.
Great. Okay.
Right. Yep, next slide.
Where is my mouse? This is a problem with the giant. I just got a new wide monitor and I can't find anything. There we go.
Oh, lucky you. All right, so we do get this question often, and that is, how can I qualify for the accelerator? And the selection committee, it's a very interesting process, by the way. We received 44 applications for this accelerator. The selection committee is looking at 3 criteria primarily. One is traction, scale, and differentiation. And I'll define those generally. Traction means traction in the Canadian market. So we are not looking at early stage companies. We're looking at companies that may have sales anywhere from $500,000 to $2 or $3 million in annual revenues. And if not that, then they have attracted investment of some kind, have strategic partners, and are rapidly developing sales, have sales on the books. Obviously, the value proposition is readily understandable and locked down. In some cases where folks are looking for investment, we need to make sure that those executive summaries, investor summaries are in place before they get here. So there's a bit of experience required, but they're still relatively young companies. as far as differentiation goes, differentiation amongst your immediate competition. You should be able to identify who your competitors are in Canada and in the U.S. and internationally for that matter, and how your product or service is different from theirs, what your value add is. And scale, a bit more difficult to define depending on who you talk to. In this case, the selection committee has agreed that scalability is what we're talking about, the ability of your business to scale up. And I think because we're talking about IT, we could be talking about users, strategic partners. There's a number of different ways to measure that. And I would have to have a conversation with the company to learn more about what they're doing to explain how scalability is relevant to their value proposition.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's relatively straightforward, I think, to usually figure out how to scale an IT business, but any that you're building hardware and things like that, it gets a lot trickier. So it's I can understand why you're not going to generalize about that.
No, and even amongst the members of the selection committee, there's some different opinions about what it means. So.
Oh, really? Okay.
It's up to them. But yeah, so those are the three areas: traction, differentiation, and scalability.
Great. Okay. Next slide.
Next slide, please. Okay, this is kind of an interesting concept. Again, this has come to us from the Silicon Valley model. After the companies have been selected to participate in the Accelerator, they are invited to this, what they call 48 hours in the Valley. In New York City, they called it in the alley, and we don't have a name yet.
How can we not have a name? Manhattan's been doing this for, what, 2 months now?
48 hours in Boston.
Is it, what are they calling themselves? Is it Entrepreneurship Alley or Silicon Alley? What, do you know? In Manhattan?
We don't know, and the reason why we don't know yet is because this whole effort, this whole Accelerator effort, is supported by the Canadian expat community. And in San Francisco, they've had that in place for at least 3 years now. We just pulled our expat network together in the last 3 months. And we have 85, I think maybe even more than that now, Canadian expats who live here. And to get into the B100 network, which is what they're called, you have to be a C-level exec, a serial entrepreneur, or an investor of some kind, angel investor or a venture capitalist. So these are a group of individuals who want to help you, want to help Canadian companies, want to see them succeed, and are giving back, essentially, to the community, and saying, look, if you're going to come down here to the Accelerator, we're going to do everything we can to leverage our networks and our experience and help you succeed. So it's up to them. My point is, it's up to them to name what they want to call this experience, because they'll be in charge of it ultimately. So for now, it's 48 hours in Boston, and that is a 2-day experience for not only the residents of the session, but we'll have 25 companies total from Canada who will come down and be introduced to the neighborhood, if you will. And that includes some networking sessions, mentoring sessions by this B100 network, a couple of corporate site visits, possibly the MIT Media Lab, places like that, and finishing off with our ribbon cutting ceremony, which is on March 27th.
Oh, exciting.
Sort of a short overview of 48 hours in the Valley, and there'll be some variation of that. Each time we run a session, it'll kick off the session.
Sounds like fun. I'm sorry I'm going to be in Arizona when you're having your kickoff. Of course, I'm not Canadian, so maybe I wouldn't be allowed in anyway.
You're on my invitation list, and that's
Thank you.
Yesterday. So sorry you can't join us.
Yeah.
Next one.
Okay.
All right, so slide number 9, let's see, what we're talking about here actually is one of these. This is a very interesting slide because it shows you that there's some photos here of the accelerators in California, a little bit of Canadian branding, but more interestingly, 170 companies have gone through the accelerator programs.
Wow,
and,
already. Wow, that's great.
We do have many success stories. There's a couple that are highlighted at the end of this presentation. And next slide.
Yow. I guess there are a few companies.
Those are all the companies that have engaged with us. And, this is kind of a bittersweet slide for me because they're all companies that went through the California Accelerator. And I kind of want to delete it and just put a blank one with Boston on it because we already have our first 8, and I have another 10 or so companies that are very excited to come down for our 48-hour program. So I'll be putting all of their logos up. And, this time next year, our Boston slide will look like this.
Here, here.
Slide 11. Right. So just getting into a few specifics about our accelerator here in Boston and where it is. There is a building in Cambridge called the Cambridge Innovation Center, which is a large incubator. It's home to about 500 technology companies. There's also some big companies in there, but many of them are startups within the CIC incubator itself. And of course, where the building is situated in Cambridge, it's right in the same neighborhood as MIT, and of course Harvard's just a couple stops away. But it's just a kind of a vibrant neighborhood, and for those companies that are coming down here, just as a matter of checking in, if you wouldn't mind letting me know, I'd be happy to get you over there and you could take a look at the building and the space. In Canada, we'll have, I don't have a photo of it yet, I'm sorry, but we do have 2 tables within this sort of open office atmosphere. For those of you who have visited incubators, you can probably envision it. It's essentially a very large open space with tables and all these exciting and inspiring entrepreneurs working vigorously at the tables. And there's a lot of collaboration and shared ideas. There's lots of interesting spaces for people to meet. There are ongoing programs at the CIC itself, additional mentoring, networking, educational, all types of things are happening over there to help you get to where you want to be, to help you with your growth. So that's just a short word about the accelerator and where it's located. And slide 12.
Actually, if you don't mind my kind of jumping in a little here, as you know, I'm recently taken up residence at the Cambridge Innovation Center myself, so I can definitely second you on the environment. It's really amazing. I'm on the 5th floor in the C3 space, which is very much that. Lots of tables, lots of chairs, and people circulating. One of the cool things about this place is there is so much food there, free food for the residents. Some of the guys there are like, yeah, I'm on the CIC meal plan. I just go different floors to get different kinds of food throughout the day. It's really it's really pretty funny, but I mean, it's a great idea to put it here. What floor is it going to be on?
We're actually going to be on an adjacent building, the 15th floor, because the current building is full and overflowing. So they're actually moving into some new space, adding more floors at 101 Main, which is right around the corner.
Right. Yes.
Connected by that retail space there. Yeah, so apparently that's already 75% full as well.
Yeah.
So we're excited, and they are going to be building it out into, again, a recreational space, bigger recreational space, larger than what they have over at the current space. So they think that they'll be getting a lot of interest and visiting back and forth. And of course,
not only, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say Tim Rowe's, dream is to build a bridge from.
That would be great because that one crosswalk is really cold right now. But yeah, and actually it's going to be and especially it's just going to be such a vibrant area, even though it's a new space that's just being opened up, because the 5th floor and I think the 4th floor as well over at 1 Broadway is also being moved over to 101 Main while they're refurbishing those 2 floors. Okay. So it's going to be probably the best place to be a startup throughout the next 6 months or so. So if you're coming down for the accelerator this time, couldn't have timed it better.
Right, and I'll be there 1 or 2 days a week, kind of just in the immediate space to help the entrepreneurs that are starting with us for this first session, and try and help them around the neighborhood so they can figure out where to go and make as many introductions as I can in the short period that they're with us.
Terrific. Okay.
Yep,
Where
next
is my
slide.
mouse? I'm trying. There we go.
Yeah, I'm not really going to get into a lot of detail on slides 12 and 13, but if you'd like, Linda, you can make this presentation available to anybody who wants it. They can have it, and they
Okay.
can read more about these two success stories. But you know, it's an example. Ad Parlor, and on slide 13, I think it's Top Hat. That have enjoyed significant success, and they were two clients of ours in the San Francisco accelerators. Again, you know, I want to have my own Boston.
It's okay. We know you're going to have a lot more starting next year, so if you want to do any more of the detail here, I mean, I'm seeing some pretty big names here, you know, Facebook, L'Oreal, Coca-Cola, so they're clearly doing quite well at Ad Parlor.
Yeah, they've done well, and as has Top Hat Monocle. I think they've got about, I think Terry has worked with them pretty closely, our manager here. I think they're up to somewhere around $5 million now. This slide might be a little bit dated.
Okay.
But I think they've already exceeded that $5 million mark.
Apparently as the result of a pivot using, you know, really up-to-date jargon, entrepreneurship jargon. That's great. Okay, 8 million in Series A. Every entrepreneur loves to hear about that. Okay.
Right. So just kind of wrapping up here, I wanted to mention to the listeners, and thank you for taking the time to listen to this. I do have another presentation that talks about all that Boston has to offer, and I'm happy to share that with anybody if they just want to flip through it. But in short, if you're trying to differentiate Boston from the other cities, just consider a few things. One that is very obvious when you live here, and that is this incredibly rich sort of educational and scientific community that we have with 150 colleges and universities in New England, with 60 of them alone being in Massachusetts. And just to mention, of course, the natural ones everybody is familiar with, MIT and Harvard, but there are so many others. You know, there's Babson and Bentley, and because of all these business schools, we really end up with a very rich entrepreneurial community that also has strengths in engineering and technology. And now we see collaboration between institutions like MIT and Harvard, where MIT is leveraging its technology and Harvard is leveraging its entrepreneurship skills, and they're coming up with collaborative ways to work together and create new companies. And then the other thing that you might want to keep in mind is Massachusetts is actually the #1 destination in the country for federal research. I think somewhere around $3 billion comes to Massachusetts.
Yeah, something
and
like that.
That's an engine, it's an economic engine. That there are a lot of technology companies that are created as a result of that. And finally, just the communities within the IT sector. I think it's hard to you can't really compare Boston to San Francisco because of the history of New England, which really grew out of manufacturing. And if you track manufacturing, going back to my dad's business, in the 70s in defense, and those defense companies, many of them are still here, and different ones are still here, have grown rather. And then from defense to medical equipment manufacturing, computer electronics, hardware in the 80s and 90s, and then telecommunications and the advent of wireless in the 90s. So all of those companies are here. There is a very rich manufacturing community, and many of those companies have spun out technology companies. And that's why we have IT companies with vibrant communities in green IT, security, health information technology, because of the incredible healthcare and pharmaceutical environment that we have here. So there is a community for almost, I guess my point is, almost every subsector of IT is represented in New England, and that is our differentiator. It's because of our history and our very unique fabric, our industry fabric. So I wanted to convey that, and I'd be happy to share that presentation with anybody who wants it.
Yeah, I would certainly love to see it and put it up on the website as well. And if I can just go ahead and bang the Boston drum a little bit more even, I would say that in terms of clean tech, We actually were building the cluster back in 2004 here, so there is a very strong clean tech community here, including a series of incubators and one in Boston as well. In terms of pharma, in terms of medical devices, this is the place to be. So regardless of the technology, you can also find students, engineering students, scientists, and the like, who are really interested in startups as well here. So if you're more of a business kind of event and looking for somebody to partner with, then it's just a terrific place. There's so much energy for it and so many ideas and so much skill. It's just wonderful. Not that I feel strongly about it or anything.
Thank you, Linda.
Although that does remind me as well. So if you're not a high-tech company, so when I'm up in Saskatchewan, a lot of the companies that I work with are either service providers or they are working into government offices and nonprofits and the like. Is there anything that can be done for them here as well? Are there other events besides the Technology Accelerator, things that they should take advantage of?
Oh gosh, yeah, I've been remiss in talking about that. Outside of the, well, I started the presentation a little bit talking about the Trade Commissioner Service, but really we're talking about two things here. The ongoing services that we provide are the services I mentioned through the Trade Commissioner Service, and those are available at all times to any Canadian company who has that level of market readiness that I talked about earlier. And then the second half of our work is this accelerator. But for the former, we also offer a range of programs throughout the year, and those things will continue. So we'll be managing the accelerator, but we'll continue to offer programming for all the other companies who are not engaged with the accelerator.
So this might be an odd kind of a question, but let's say that I wanted to build a business in Europe as well. You know, I wanted to keep my home base in North America, but expand into Europe or possibly Asia, but let's just say Europe because we're closer to that. Is there any point to coming to Boston to help start establishing that? With all the consulates that are here, are there relationships, things that a Canadian company can take advantage of or startup can take advantage of in Boston that will help them to move into other countries?
Sure. I think that gosh, you know, I'm going to be biased, but I'll say two things about it. The first one is that our department is looking at how we can help clients provide the same services to clients, but provide them with a multinational service. And they're actually working on a project right now to perhaps move us in that direction. And what that would mean is the Canadian client could come to any post around the world and say, for instance, I'd like to come to Boston, but I also see opportunities for us in Beijing or Taipei or Singapore. And then we would collaborate with our counterparts in those target countries. And the 3 or 4 of us would put together a plan where it made sense to do that. But, you know, coordinating that is probably a little bit more complicated. And, of course, the other thing to remember is from the small company point of view, is how much resources they have to work with, what's realistic and practical, and making sure that we don't dilute the company's efforts in the home country, which in this case is Canada. Mm-hmm. So if you're successfully generating $3 to $5 million in sales and revenues, and you're profitable and enjoying that profit, and you see markets in other countries, we want to help you grow your business, but not to the detriment of your current business. And so planning that growth is, sort of, I think, an exercise that you need to direct your attention to, especially if you're going after more than one market. You've got to be realistic about what you can do.
That is incredibly good advice, and actually a bunch of our Boston-based startups, American or otherwise, could definitely use hearing that advice a few times to stay focused themselves. So good stuff. Okay. Boy, your tax dollars at work, though, huh? What all kinds of great opportunities.
It's incredible, yeah. It's a good opportunity. And the last slide, I've actually already covered this. I talked a bit about the well, it's called the C100 in California. Here it's the B100 for Boston. But what this will turn into, just as one additional piece of information, this network of Canadian expats living in America will eventually all join together. And many of them, of course, are already acquainted. But the C100 brand is so strong in California that we actually have to make sure that we're up to snuff here in Boston so that we meet their standards, which, of course, I know that we do and perhaps may exceed them. But, you know, it's just a matter of time before this powerful network of Canadians living in America will be tremendous value, you know, to these companies coming down, especially as they start networking socially and acting as mentors, East Coast to West Coast. There might be someone here who doesn't have the expertise that's needed and vice versa, so we can start trading clients and adding expertise where it's needed. So that will be something to look for in probably the next 24 months, I would say.
How exciting! And yes, absolutely. I'm confident that that Thierry will be very pleased with his move here from Silicon Valley and all of the improvements that we'll be able to make in terms of reaching even more investors and partners and customers. So that's great. Again, not that I'm biased or anything. I just think Boston is a great place to do business. Okay, anything else on this slide?
Yeah, he is. That's the end of the presentation. Thierry is coming around and, you know, and seeing Boston and learning more about it. And he does have a lot of confidence already with what we've achieved in a short period of time.
Oh, wonderful.
But, you know, the proof is in the pudding. So I just would like to finish with saying I'd invite any of our friends from Saskatchewan to come and visit and have a look at the Accelerator, and don't hesitate to contact me if I can be of assistance to you in this market.
Wow, terrific. Thank you, Chris. Let me go back to the actual presentation here. Sorry about that. Okay, where are you? I know you're here someplace. Honestly. There we go. So, okay, so just one last time, anybody have any additional questions for Chris? You've got a few more seconds to get your hand up. But I'll just take the moment then to say thank you so much for joining me, Chris, and thank you so much as well for being such a great part of the community and a good friend to me as well. It's just really a privilege to know you.
Thanks for inviting me. I appreciate being included.
Okay, and then let me just summarize for people in the audience that I hope you'll join me on, especially for sure on the 8th when we have Fred Surr, the Captains of Industry, on the 12th of April with Laura Kachanova, both doing really useful and interesting things for startups in marketing. And I hope to see people on the audience in either Saskatoon or Regina next week and back in Boston on April 24th. So let me just check one more time. It looks like we've gotten through all of the questions. So I will just say thank you ever so much, Chris, and looking forward to seeing you sometime soon.
Thank you.
All right, take care. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.